Hey everyone, Mike Hidalgo here. Thank you for joining us on another FCP Euro DIY. Today we're going to be working on our 99 Carrera 911, also known as a 996. Today's project is going to entail replacing the expansion tank on this car. A couple reasons why you may want to look into this. First of all, on these cars, the expansion tank is located on the driver's side bank of the motor, so it's encapsulated underneath the engine compartment. It sees a lot of heat cycles, and over time, plastic tends to break down, being exposed to all the heat and elements that it may encounter. So they can tend to crack, sometimes they break, sometimes they flat out just fall apart. We don't know how long ours has been on our car specifically, so we're going to go ahead and remove it and replace it with this fresh new unit. Our kit includes a new tank with a cap included, a new Porsche coolant level sensor, as well as a jug of Porsche coolant. Now, before we get started on this job, let's take a look at the tools that we're going to need. For this job, we got a couple basic tools, nothing out of this world. You have a couple 10mm, 13mm, and 18mm sockets, as well as a 5mm Allen hex. We're going to use a couple different pliers. These are just what worked out for us as far as getting the clamps off of the hoses. A couple different extensions, a 3/8 ratchet, a 3/8 torque wrench, and then we have a big 1/2-inch breaker bar, and then a nice to have a 1/2-inch impact. Now that we have all the tools covered, let's go get started on this DIY. So first, we're going to go ahead and remove our Airbox. We're going to unplug our mass airflow sensor by pressing these two tabs in. I like to push it into the car, into the box, and then pull it back out. I'll free that up. From there, I'm going to remove the oil fill tube. This just pops up and out of the way, just like that. Next, I'm going to remove this hose clamp that connects the intake boot to the throttle body. You can use a flathead screwdriver. I'm using an 8mm socket on a ratchet. And then from there, you want to remove the 13mm bolt that holds the whole box to the engine bay. From there, we can go ahead and give the intake boot a gentle tug and separate that. Then we're going to pull the airbox out and remove the mass airflow sensor wire from the little connecting clip that holds it in place. Before we go ahead and drain the coolant out of the vehicle, we're going to go ahead and remove our cap. That way the system can flow a little bit better. I didn't have my Wheaties this morning. What the F, Bobby? You see this cap? Quick tip, obviously, but can't hurt to remind you all, don't do this with the vehicle being hot. You want to make sure you have a stone cold engine before we remove anything related to the coolant tank. And generally when you're working on it, makes life a little bit easier. Now we're underneath the vehicle, we're going to go ahead and drain the coolant. You have your drain plug right here. This should be enough to get the fluid out of the reservoir. Of course, you can also use a baster or a syringe to just evacuate the reservoir. However, we're going to be doing a full extensive flush on this vehicle, so we're just going to drain it from up here. It's going to require a 5mm Allen hex. Oh, yeah. All right. I'm going to go ahead and raise my catch can up just so it doesn't splash all over the place. Now that I've bathed myself in coolant, we're going to go ahead and reinstall our coolant drain plug. You're going to want to make sure you replace it if possible with a new fresh crush washer. We're going to get that threaded in, started by hand. Then you want to torque it down to 7 foot-pounds or 10 Newton meters. There we go. Now we're back up inside the engine bay. We're going to go ahead and work on removing our secondary air pump so that we can get this tank out of the way. First, you want to remove the wires that run through this clip. Simply pull back on this guy, it opens up. You lift them and just literally put them out to the side. Close that back up. Next, you're going to want to pull off this hose. Simply comes off just like that. Just tuck it to the side. Perfect. From there, we have a 10mm bolt up here. You would have another one down here. Ours is missing it already. And a 10mm in the back there. That one is already loose, as you can see, but we'll work with that when we get to it. Start removing this top one. This one also holds in the expansion tank. Again, that's a 10mm bolt. Our 10mm at the bottom was already loose. Whoever was in here before didn't tighten it down, so this just slipped out. And so did this connector. To remove the connector, you want to pinch the 2 tabs on this end, pull back, and it's free. From there, we can go ahead and pull this secondary air pump out. Now we have a little bit more visibility to our tank. You can see we have a coolant line that connects up top here. We have another line that connects down here, and we have one more line that connects right at the bottom of the tank. 2 things to note: we do have a coolant level sensor, which we'll have to unplug before we pull the tank out. And then we also have another coolant hose back here that is a little bit hidden out of view that we're going to have to remove before pulling this out. So let's start with this top hose. I'm going to take some pliers to undo the clamp and the hose at the same time, apparently. And we'll just leave that over to the side. No big dinos. This hose just pulls down itself. There's no clamp holding it in place. It's just an overspill or overflow. If the tank were to overpressurize, it would spill into this channel on the top of the tank and route itself down into that hose. Now from here, we have this bottom hose, which you can see the stock clamp is not in the most ideal place. I'll try to remove it in place. If not, we'll go ahead and pull the tank out and then get to it, simply by kind of pulling it and popping it out of its home. You can hear that pop. It just released. Just beautiful. Now we got that off, we can pull this off. Oh, not too bad. We didn't have a stream. Set that to the side. This can be fed underneath the tank. I'm going to shove a towel in here just to help minimize the spillage everywhere. Just something like that. Now we have this one last hose that's up here. It routes itself through the body of the tank, and we're going to try and pull that forward a little bit so we can disconnect it. I'm going to go ahead and try popping this hose up a little bit out of the coolant tank itself. Maybe it'll give us some more playroom. There we go. That's exactly what we needed. Now that we got the clamp off, we're going to go ahead and pull this hose off. Oh yeah, there's that good stuff. So to give you a quick rundown of what we're going to do, we have 2 18mm bolts on the bumper side of the engine that we're going to loosen up to drop the engine down a little bit. We're going to do this on the ground, but I just want to give you a quick preview of what we're doing. I'm going to use an impact 18mm socket with an extension. We're going to break them loose while supporting the engine with a floor jack and a piece of wood. That way, once we break them loose, we can slowly lower it down. About an inch or 2 is all we should need, and then we should be able to pull out the expansion tank from up above. So without further ado, let's get started. Now that we have our 18mm bolts removed, we have our jack in place. We're going to go ahead and get ready to drop it down a little bit and get this tank out. I'm going to put the cap back on just in case whatever's in here has less of a chance of spilling all over the ground in the car. Now from here, we can go ahead and lower down the engine a couple inches. Let's start with that. That should be more than enough. Then from here, you're going to want to take your tank. Normally it's stuck up in this bracket, but you saw us trying pulling it out earlier, so it's a little bit undone already. But it's going to come out towards the engine. I'm going to route this line underneath. Push this out of the way. And there she is. Now don't forget, you have your electrical connector for the coolant level sensor. Since we're replacing it and this one's broken, we're just going to twist that out. unplug our sensor and get ready for install. Now that our old tank's out and our engine's still dropped, we're gonna go ahead and feed our new one in. Before we put the tank all the way in, we already have our coolant level sensor in. This is just a tapered fit. There is no O-ring, so don't panic if you don't see one on there. And then we're gonna grab our connector and plug it in now so that we don't have to worry about it later, as it's a tight squeeze down there. There we go. I'm gonna try to keep these coolant lines out of the way if possible. It is a tight fit, so you're gonna wanna finagle your way in here. Now that our tank is mostly in, we're gonna go ahead and grab our pliers for our hose clamps and get them situated and snugged in. Then we'll go ahead and slot them back into the tank in their respective homes. That's there. I'm gonna remove this 10mm nut that I had put here at the beginning so I didn't lose it, just so it's not in my way for install. And you wanna make sure the tank is keyed into this bracket up top. You don't want it sliding off while you're driving. Put this 10mm nut back. Just for now, this is gonna have to come off again when we put our secondary air pump back in, but just to line it up. Now we're gonna go ahead and connect our lower hose. I'm gonna make sure, originally this line was routed over, so we're gonna go ahead and leave it over. Go ahead and grab our pliers, get our hose clamp situated. It's forever home. Beautiful. And then I'm gonna go ahead and, before I connect this other hose, I'm gonna snug this one in its home up here in the reservoir. You'll see there's a little channel for this upper hose. That's gonna go right there. And now we can connect our last hose. It's gonna be this one right here. And lastly, we have this little overflow line. We're just gonna go ahead and tuck it underneath here. Something like that. Now that this is all hooked up, we're gonna go ahead and put our secondary air pump back in and fill this system up. Now we're gonna reinstall the secondary air pump. I'm gonna go ahead and plug in the electrical connector first. You can see it's notched. It only goes in one way. There we go. Normally this is gonna have a little channel here that was already broken that will hold this in place. You can go ahead and throw a zip tie in it if yours is missing like ours is. We're gonna go ahead and do that real quick. Then we're gonna go ahead and remove our 10mm nut that we put back earlier to keep our tank in place. And we're gonna slip our secondary air pump back into place, roughly. Slip our hose over. That's just a press fit, there's no clamp on there. And if there was, it's long gone. 10mm can go back. Then, if your car's been better loved than ours has, you would have 2 more bolts holding it into place there. As you saw when we took this out, the back one wasn't even doing anything. We're gonna have to replace those sometime down the road. But all we have left to do is tuck our wires back through this clip. Pop that open. Slip them in and close it. All right, my good people. At this point, you can see we're at the back of the car. We're ready to bleed the vacuum system after our job that we've done today. So what I've done so far is just set up the equipment, the airlift tool as we're gonna need it. For this specific car, I had to go ahead and remove the 10mm nut that held the tank in place, which you saw earlier. So what I did is I pulled it over so we can get our air line and our suction line in place. And then from here, I went ahead and just gave it a little bit of PSI to make sure that our system didn't have any leaks before we filmed for you guys. So far, the system seems to be holding. You want to pump up your gauge to about 20 to 25. You can see that on the tool instructions. Right now, we're just about 12 pounds of pressure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to crank it up to 20, 25. Couple things to note. If the system is not fully empty, you're going to have some coolant come back up the tool. It's got a breather up here. It's going to spew out a little bit, so you always want to do this with the car as empty as possible. We've tried to do our best on that, but we're for sure going to have some residuals. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pressurize the gauge to the level that it needs to be at, and as long as it doesn't drop after about a minute or so of sitting there, then that means our system is completely airtight, and we can work on filling the car up. So let's go ahead and get started on that. You can see we're hitting about 20 pounds almost. We want to get to 24, 26 is the correction. However, as you have noticed by the Niagara Falls scene we got going on here, there is still some coolant in the system that we're battling. So again, this machine does not work really well if you still have a ton of coolant in the vehicle. So we're going to try to get to our desired pressure. If we just flat out can't reach it, we'll try to disconnect a couple more hoses and push out the rest of the coolant in the car and set up again. Now that we've reached our full pressure, the system's holding, we're going to go ahead and dip our suction hose into our mix. We have a 50-50 mix of distilled water and genuine Porsche coolant. You can see it's totally the right color versus what came out of the car. So you want to make sure that your suction end is all the way at the bottom of the bucket at all times, so you avoid filling in with any air by accident. So I'm going to get this started, and then we'll start filling the system. Now to fill the system, we're simply going to release this blue valve, and then it should instantly pull up the coolant from the bucket. And there you have it, my good people. Pretty straightforward with this vacuum bleeder from Airlift 2, that is. So now what I'm going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and remove this tool, put on our cap, and conclude this DIY for you good people. Now if your reservoir is overfilled, then you can go ahead and use something like a syringe or a baster just to remove any excess. I'm going to make sure that we're at the fill line, and if I need to, I'll top it off with my jug. But otherwise, that should wrap up this filling procedure. Now we can install our new 18mm nut. Use the impact just to snug it up. And then we're going to torque it down to 63 foot-pounds. Now we're going to go ahead and repeat the same on the other side. Now that we've snugged this side down, we're going to go ahead and torque it down to 63 foot-pounds. Now we're going to put our Airbox back in. On the bottom, you'll see there's supposed to be 2 allocating dowels. Ours is missing one. So we're going to go ahead and make sure the one on the right finds its way in. We're going to go ahead and slip it in. As we do that, we're going to run our mass airflow sensor wire through that clip on the corner. There we go. And we can go ahead and line up our Airbox. Make sure we get that dowel in its home. Down below, there we go. We can slip our intake boot on. Now we're going to reinstall our 13mm bolt that holds the box into place. There we go. Oil filler tube can be popped back into its home. I'm using an 8mm socket, however you can just use a flathead. And we can pop our air tube back in. just like that. And then last but not least, reconnect our mass airflow sensor. There we have it. Now that the motor is bolted back up into place, we can go ahead and remove our floor jack, lowering it in slowly just for precaution. Pull it out of the way. And there you have it, my good people. That concludes this DIY for today. Overall, not too bad. A little taunting with the fact that you have to lower the engine a couple inches, but other than that, pretty straightforward. If you guys like what you saw today, please be sure to give this video a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments on this DIY, leave those in the box below. And if you like this DIY and you want to see more, please consider subscribing. We make new ones all the time. As always, thank you for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.